I had enough people in my arena that I knew what I had to do in regards to the pain. I'm involved in a lot of things, on a daily basis in regards to, the progress of my recovery, because I'm a courageous survivor of sexual abuse and rape.
Don't Hide the Scars, a weekly podcast focused on addiction and recovery. Created by the nonprofit PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, and founded by Flindt Andersen.
Welcoming to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, Lang Martinez. Thank you for joining founder of PAIN, Flindt Andersen, and myself, Jason LaChance. We really appreciate your time.
You bet, Lang.
No, man, it's an honor to be here. And PAIN, we all know about PAIN.
Yes, we do.
Oh boy, all a little too well. But it's interesting you point out that word. I was having a conversation on a recovery meeting, and I said, the difference between the hero and villain, right? And people,
right?
Well, what? And I went, well, it's what they did with their pain. And so many of us are doing something with it, and you've definitely had your spill of it. And thank you for your time, but I really want to dig into, your experience. You've had so many articles you've been a part of and speaking about really what it's like to be an addict and homeless. And the average person doesn't even understand addiction, let alone both of those.
Right.
Of course, the addiction as far as what level it goes to, going to the homeless, being in the homeless arena and the life that I live. But then again, I lived that, and it's actually by choice. And once you start living in that type of situation, it becomes advantageous to where you're comfortable in it. And I call it living like in a diarrhea, living in a diarrhea sauna. You get comfortable. You get comfortable in it, and you get comfortable in the pain. It's something that you're used to because of a cause and effect of maybe something that happened to you that made this happen. And when I talk about it, I try to make the illustration, because living life like that is life terms. It's like living in shit. And I apologize for the language, but somebody told me once, and I said, sitting in that sauna of diarrhea, living that life the way that I was for so many years, whether it was prison or homelessness, or just being with me caught up in what was going on in my head, I realized that once I made a commitment to surrender, and I believe in God, that all I had to do was look to the right. And there were some steps that led me out of that sauna. But I had to stand up, and I had to take those steps. And the recovery part is wiping all that stuff off of you. Mm-hmm. It's a daily thing.
Mm-hmm. So Lang, was it getting clean first before you got out of your homeless situation?
Well, I was homeless here in Ventura County. And then I ended up homeless in L.A. down on Vernon and Western. And Vernon and Western, the situation's pretty bad. Right there you have the gangs. Right there you have what they call it, the Crips, the Rolling 60s. And right there people die. There was a place there called Master Burgers. And it was pretty bad. And, to be able to go outside on a daily basis, living in staying on a shelter there called First to Serve, and hear the gunshots and the helicopters and, the prostitution, people suffering, and there was quite frequently on a weekly basis, you could see, the lime chalk marks. I was in this place, and I was making phone calls, and I had a black gentleman, and I can't find him. His name was Walter Diggs. They called him OG. And I used to hang when being in that shelter, and he whispered in my ear, and that's a story that I haven't been able to tell you. And I'll tell it is, he said, "White boy," he said, "you're better than this." And he said, "I love you." And he said, "You have 1 week to get out of here. You're better than this." And I said, "What do you mean 1 week? This isn't you." And I said, "Well, I can make phone calls. I used to be in recovery. I can make this phone call. You can go with me, OG." And he said, "No, Lang," he said, "I'm a Crip." And he said, "Until the day I die." He said, "I'm already 60 years old. I've already signed on." I ended up making the phone call and I got into acting on July 25th, 2018. And before I got into acting, I remember that I was doing so much dope and pills that I knew if I closed my eyes that it was over. My heartbeat, I wrote about it, was about 16, 17, 20 at the most, and that's real. And I just keep hitting that pipe and drinking lots of fluid just to stay alive. And that day I ended up getting an acting. And wow, this is an honor because I never get to tell a story. So, I stayed up all night and I was using, and there was a guy next to me, Kevin, that was black. He was out on parole, and he was part of the church there and down there in Watts. And it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and OG Walter Diggs was standing by the door, and he said, "Get up, get your white ass up. It's time to go." I'm Hispanic. So I got up. I got up and I showered, and I had all my stuff packed, and you had to be at Union Station by a certain time. I think it was 9 o'clock, and they would pick you up and take you to Castaic up there in Antelope Valley. So Kevin was going to go with me, and we got up, and I could barely stand up. I could barely walk, and you get the next bus, and you get to the red or the blue line where you catch the trains, and God really woke me up because I'd get on these buses, they're like double buses for the transit, and the buses were packed with a lot of black people, mostly black people that were persevering to go to work, and I was watching the stuff around me, and I was holding on to the bar as it was moving. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Take a breath.
And Kevin said, "This is my brother Lang. He's going to get some help today." And black people gave me their seat. And at that time in the morning, they're packed. I saw a whole different life. I'd been to prison. They gave me their seat, and Kevin would talk about me and talk about the Lord and about me. And then you'd get off, and you'd have to go on the train platform. Never done that before. And I get on the platform. You have to get in, get the tickets, and there'd be people that are hustling, and right there, in the hood. And you'd get on the train, the blue line. You got to get to Union Station at a certain time, and that ride was hell for me too. And Kevin was carrying all my stuff. Well, we finally get to Union Station, and it's big. It was big. And you had to walk, and I had to be at this location by a certain time, or I wasn't going to get tapped in. And we finally got there where this van arrives, and it's, summer, July 25th, and I get there. And there was ladies with black people, and they were loving me. And this van pulls up, and the guy takes one look at me, and he says, "This guy's mental health." And Kevin says, "No, man, my brother's dying." They start getting on the radio and talking. And back then, because of Eagle, I work on that now. I said, "You don't know who I am. I'm Lang Martinez. I've had this before. I worked in recovery. You're going to help me." Wasn't even paying attention, but Kevin was yelling at him, saying, "You're going to take him," because it's a county program, liabilities, and I'm whacked. Well, Kevin said, "If you don't end up taking him today," the guy was another brother. Kevin said, "It's going to be a bad day for you." And the guy looked at Kevin and said, "What'd you say? If you don't take Lang, it's going to be a bad day for you. This van ain't going to Acton." The van took me to Acton. And I stood outside of Acton. You got to go to the gate. You got security, and it's like camping out setup, but a little bit of prison, yard type mentality. I mean, the look, which I'm used to, and they kept me outside that gate in the hot sun for a lot of hours. Everybody else was going in, but me. They were feeding me waters, and finally they get on the radio. They'd be talking to everybody else, probably was seeing things or whatever. And I kept saying, "You don't know who I am, and we know who you are." finally, after quite a few hours, they actually brought me a golf cart, and they let me into Acton, and the counselor there, her name's April. They, in a county program, you start the next day. They actually let me sit and go through it for a week before I had to start going to meetings.
So that's how it started. So I'm assuming that your drug of choice was methamphetamine, or were you like me? It was just kind of everything, with one primary drug of choice.
Yeah, it ended up being methamphetamine. The choice that actually put me in the prison the most was actually crack cocaine. I mean, I think meth ended up keeping me out of prison because of the cost factor.
Oh, goodness gracious.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox, inpatient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living, support groups, and more. With 50-plus years of combined experience and sobriety, Flindt Andersen and Thelma Gatlin Wilson provide adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, and a safe, comfortable environment. To begin the process of recovery, to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction, call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com.
I think one of the important things, and I commend you because I can share in this, is talking about, so many people, want to go, oh, booze is the gateway, weed is the gateway, trauma. It's three gentlemen that have had varying trauma, but you and I both went through sexual stuff as a kid, and I know a lot of men bury that down, and I think it's so important that men like yourself are speaking out about that, because it helps other men understand they're not alone in it. I mean, one of my heroes, Sugar Ray Leonard, he shares that fact, and once he did, I'm like, whoa, okay, I don't have to slump my shoulders anymore for this. The champ went through this, and he got sober and clean, and so can I.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because as far as the sexual abuse, that's how I ended up meeting Catherine, is in the article I did, one of the Nobody Knows But Me. Nobody knows but me. Everybody says about nobody knows but me. God did. I've had plenty of offers on the name. Catherine knows that. Nobody knows but me. God did. And I said, it's not for sale. And they said, well, we can go, nobody knows ... but me. God did, Lang Martinez. And I said, no. I said, nobody knows but me. God did is about each and every one of us darkest secrets, because God knows. How can I sell something or market something and give somebody the rights to something that doesn't belong to me? It belongs to you. It belongs to each and every one of us. God knows. When I was there down in that area, I was going down the alley, and I just got done doing, that Matt Cox, Real True Crimes.
I've heard of it, but I've not.
Yeah, it got released a few days ago, and I was actually to tell that story. When I was down there on Vernon and Western, you'd go in the back alleys, and in the back alleys, it was some dirty couches. And on the dirty couches, some of the prostitutes would sleep there. And there was this one prostitute, her name was Coco. I was actually able to go back there and see her being sober. We were doing some filming with West Coast Storytellers or something. Excuse me. She was there, and she started crying when she seen me. She ended up dying, but going down that alley, I remember one morning I went down there, and she was crying, and she was dirty. She was a beautiful woman. And she said, I got no money to get a crack kid. And then she was telling me about the story that people were coming all through the night and making her do sexual acts. And I remembered what happened to me back in 1981. If you read some of my stuff on my Google, you see, what happened after a Cher concert in 1981. I was involved in that area. And I remember what Kevin Scott Hamilton did to me. I have one of the first cases in California, the Superior Court, that he's no longer a John Doe. the judge gave him a name, so I can say it. It's on my Google. His name's Kevin Scott Hamilton. And I remember what he did to me. So having sobriety 3 times 5 years, now I just celebrated 5 years.
Nice.
For the 4th time. Oh,
all right.
Yeah. All right. No, yeah. They never thought. Yeah. I remember I also too, I was sexually abused and raped, and it triggered it by seeing what happened to her, the gunshots, and I knew what it was. So I lost track. But having sobriety 3 times 5 years, everybody says to me, Lang, why the 5 years? Was it the program? We worked in the steps. We doing this, we did it. And I said, it was the pain. It was the pain. Like it was the pain. Well, I know what the pain is, and you just share a little bit of what yours is. So I knew because of the pain, I had enough people in my arena that I knew what I had to do in regards to the pain. I'm involved in a lot of things, on a daily basis in regards to, the progress of my recovery, because I'm a courageous survivor of sexual abuse and rape. I think you shared it happened to you too, sir, right?
Molested, yeah.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. And the place that I was at, it was a Hollywood place. It was called the Odyssey, and being in that club and connected, to those kind of people back then. I was connected to Eddie Nash. They talked about the Wonderland murders. That was July of '81. Working through my pain and becoming a homeless advocate and seeing what happens to the men, knowing that men caught up in homelessness, 1 out of 3, the women, it's constant. And you saw me, I think, I talked about that in California Insider, if you saw me. I promised this young lady that I advocated for, Tanya Doolin, when they were getting ready to put me in the studio. And I looked at her, she went with me. And I said, Tanya, I made a promise. I'm going to tell the story. And I talked about being caught up in homelessness, and I talked about women caught up in homelessness and what they go through. You never see that. You never really hear that conversation about that's their survival. It doesn't matter what a woman looks like, and I don't mean that derogatory, because women are beautiful. I mean, it talks about it. They should be treated as queens. It doesn't matter, but what they go through in the homeless encampments is sad. For women to come out of that situation and be caught up in any type of recovery and getting any time, that's truly a miracle. And where we're at today is truly a miracle too.
Lang, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
It was interesting that prior to coming in, I was talking with one of my staff members, just kind of on relapse, and now you mentioned that 5-year mark. I was trying to explain to her, and you may agree with me, may disagree with me. That's okay. No, again, this isn't a competition. I hate almost when I say, but I got, 23 years in, and I was explaining to her, I have to have I hope this makes sense. I have to have a foot surgery, and I needed to have it like 6 months ago.
Right.
And I've had 35 surgeries total in my life, and I just hate them. And so I finally realized I've been putting this off because it's not that I'm going to go out and use again, because I'm going to have to take some sort of pain meds, and it's monitored by my family and everything else, but I hate the process so much that it's almost like I have to get mentally tough for this. Because I know what I need to do in recovery. I need to know I know I need what to do on my daily stuff here. Okay. But getting ready for something like this again. And so I think for all of us, there has to come a point where, and this is almost unexplainable to people, we just have to get mentally tough over some of this stuff. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, as far as mentally tough, I mean, you talk about the foot surgery. Well, we already had the surgery, and there was no anesthetic. So now we got to get into the part of the rehabilitation of the recovery part. So you got to get mentally ready for that. Absolutely. It's on a daily basis.
But yeah, but I think what I'm really meaning is this, because is getting mentally tough for the fact that under no circumstances whatsoever am I going to relapse.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad I mentioned it. Somebody asked me the question about that. I had an incident that came up a few years ago, and it was a lesson where I didn't let go and let God. So
Yeah.
I did it Lang's way, and I ended up getting some stuff. I ended up in the newspapers, and it ended up working out okay. And it was a lesson, but I ended up, for me, it's my story. I can only tell you my story, but it goes to what you were saying, mentally tough. The platform that I have and some of the mistakes I've made, they're on a different platform, and you get people that follow you and stuff like that. And when this happened to me, before that happened to me, they'd say, Lang, you do this, you do that. Should we make the door bigger for you? And I'd say, well, yeah. And I'd say, it's not your name in the paper. So I'm going to get to your answer. So when something happened to me and God knocked me down, and there was an article was written, Ventura County Homeless Advocate Seeks Redemption. It was written by Mark Alvarado about my story and, what I go through. Right. So having a platform, and then if you look at my Facebook or articles or whatever I do, I don't comment. I really don't comment. I share my journey. I share my mistakes. I share my recovery, and doing this, I have to get mentally fit. So every day, and sometimes when you're talking about it, carries a responsibility, just like both of you have responsibility. We carry responsibilities. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether you're going in a meeting, you have one day, we have a responsibility to get back. So you got to be mentally fit. Sometimes I just wake up and I crawl. I go in the bathroom and I get into a ball and I just cry. And sometimes I wish I didn't have a platform. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll make a phone call to Dr. Lee from Children Tonight and say, Dr. Lee, yeah, I can't use again, can I? No. I can't go kill the perpetrator. No. I can't even run him over. No. I can't go break the law. No. But you made that decision, Lang, when you chose the platform. I got to choose the platform. God chose it. Well, yeah, Lang, you need to finish the story. And the story is that you show your story share, one, your experience, strength, and hope. But one, there is a God. And two, you need to get to the other side, learn about forgiveness and the healing, and you got to die sober.
Yeah. I get
it.
That.
Is mental. It is. Before I got on the show, and I always wanted to tell a story about Kevin and about Walter, and I don't want to be too mentally fit either, to where I don't feel emotion.
Of course.
There's been meetings in regards to me. We're getting ready to do a nonprofit. And, they said it's the Nobody Knows But Me Foundation, as far as educating, with the sex trafficking, because that's what I do. As they said about me and healing, is Lang ready? And then Mark Alvarado said, I don't know if Lang will ever be healed. There's a verse that talks about perseverance, pain, God, whatever, in the Bible. I don't want to ever stop meeting people like you and not remembering the emotion, but sure, remembering the emotion, not just mine, but I feel for the others, because I know.
Yeah, that emotion that we have when we're telling our story and helping others with it is so vastly important. Never want to lose that. This is almost going to sound weird, but I almost don't ever want to be classified as healed.
So it made sense. Thank you. Hey, you finally said it. Okay, because everybody said to me, and I'm glad you said that the first time. Thank you.
If I'm healed, then I'm going to turn back into probably the same old real asshole. Okay, well, that I was before. I mean, I don't know, but no, that emotion that we have, and I'll be honest with you, there are people out there doing what we're doing,
Right.
Okay. That sometimes I'm just going to say it, have that fake emotion, have that,
Sure.
and you can tell. And that's the thing about speaking to people, Lang. People know when you're throwing them BS. They know when you are not sincere. They know when you don't mean what you're saying. And brother, I can tell you mean what you say.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.
I get phone calls, from different media groups. And I'm not saying this to brag. I get phone calls from different things on TV, things, talk shows, whatever. And I got a call one time, and it was after I did NASCAR or something else. And they said, "Hey, let me watch on the show, your story, Hollywood." And it was the producer, the person on the show, the TV, talking to me about airing all this bullshit. I'm sorry.
No, it's
okay,
all right.
That's okay, man.
We say bullshit all the time.
Yeah, I said, "How many chairs do you have?" And he said, "What?" I said, "How many chairs do you have?" He goes, "Well, you can bring in somebody else, and if you have attorneys, they can be in the back of the studio." I said, "No." "Well, you know what? We give you, they were going to pay or something. Didn't matter." And I said, "No." They go, "What do you mean by chairs?" "We want to talk about a potential book. People are working on a script. You got all these things going on. You just got them doing this, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "By the grace of God, go on." I said, "I don't know." "What don't you know?" "Well, I have a real problem with people that get on shows that come from where we come from, and they want to talk about their book. I'm still learning about Lang. I have a whole village, including you people now in my life, that are part of it because I'm effing broken still. And the reason I said this to the producer is I said, "What are you going to? You're going to get me on a show and ask me questions that I can't answer. Well, let's talk about the potential. Nobody knows but me." "Well, nobody knows. I don't even know." No, I said, "There's been people that have believed in Lang, and I said we could fill up your stage, and you need them to ask questions about Lang because I don't know. I'm here because somebody believed in me, and people are around, they're believing in me and guiding me. And if I do that, that'll be true ego because I don't have an answer. Yeah, I'm Lang Martinez. Nobody knows but me." Hey, it all started it all started by somebody believing in me. It all started with God believing in me surrendering, right? Being on the show. This is part of the chapter, whatever goes on in my life to share to others. You believed in me, or I wouldn't be here. Right. I'm still learning about Lang. You know what I mean? I don't, when you were talking about that, never heal. You're right. These people that do stuff in this type of business and you can sit there and have a conversation. Yeah, I was there once too. But did you read No Shit Sherlock? No, I didn't. Well, you know what I mean? Yeah, well, no shit, Sherlock. Yeah.
Well, Flindt, kind of off what you were talking about, I was talking with our mutual friend Hick Jeremy about that idea of people where they say, "I'm recovered." And I'm not here to dispute that, as maybe that is for some people, but him and I, and especially as him and I talk a lot about our faith, there's a lot of mutual faith there, is he goes, "Well, don't you think it'd be dangerous for guys like you and I to say I'm recovered?" And I go, "You're right. It'd be very dangerous." And he goes, "I guess we can say that on the day we meet our maker."
Yeah.
And I went, oh shit, you're right.
Right.
And that struck me powerfully.
That's powerful.
And I don't know that I'd want to step into that mentality because I'm afraid then I would stop being of service. Like, I'm recovered. I'm good.
Right.
I don't need to help you guys. I don't need help.
Right.
I don't need help from my faith or anything else. But that's for me. I'm not here to judge other people's vernacular or,
of course,
or whatever it is. But
of course. And Lang, I want to bring up something else. And I'm hoping I'm not overstepping boundaries here by any means, because you mentioned something, especially when he mentioned the fact that he wants to start the nonprofit. Okay. Look, my friend, there is nothing. And again, if I'm getting this wrong, you tell me. Because of what you're doing, because of the story that you're telling that is so powerful, okay?
Yes, sir.
It is going to help a lot of people out there. I'm here to tell you it's going to take time. It takes effort. It takes commitment. And it takes finances. And there is never a place in the Word where it says we should not be paid for a day's labor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Ever. That nowhere in there does it say that. Nowhere does it say because we are believers that we should not get paid for our efforts. Okay?
Absolutely.
And so I don't want you to ever think that that's the case, because the reality today, as it's been the reality over time immemorial, right? We have to have income in order to function and in order to reach people and to reach more people. It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
God does not have a problem with us getting paid. It's what we do with those funds that matter.
Yeah.
But it's also taking care of yourself, you physically, spiritually, emotionally, your family, whoever. Okay, making sure you have food on your table, making sure you have a roof over your head, making sure you have a vehicle to get from point A to point B.
Well, it's taken a long time. I was sick with the Bichettes. I owned a credit business and I was doing very well and I had something pop up. And then what happened is I went to, when I was in, then it was the paper, there was something that took place. We don't need to get into it. You read about it. I ended up in LA and I'm consulting with Hoppix and all these big pieces in regards to homeless advocacy. And I'm working in can you see? Yeah. And I'm working in recovery for West Valley Treatment Center. And I ended up getting a rare disease called Behçet's syndrome. It's an autoimmune. So I went blind and some stuff happened to me. There's like only 2 people there. It's called Behçet's. Yeah. Look it up. Behçet's syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. I know you're smiling. People say, Lang, what do you have? And I said, I got Behçet's. They go, we know you're full of shit. I said, I got Behçet's. God gave me Behçet's because Mexican white people and black people don't get Behçet's. Right. You look it up. You don't get it when you're 58 years old. And I got Behçet's. They said I actually, by what I put myself through, the stress and everything else, I ended up changing my own DNA. And I got this thing called the Silk Road disease.
Wow.
It's an autoimmune. But to go back to what we say, so I ended up having this and then ended up nothing. And then I was taken care of by children tonight because of my story. I get income. I just got a new car, and with the nonprofit, you're exactly right. I got a lot. This thing is going big right now. In fact, what we're going to do with the Nobody Knows But Me Foundation is we're going to use a sponsorship. We're waiting for an answer from NASCA, National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. So I've already reached out to mayors and police officers. And when I switched up from the homeless and I went to the arena where God wants me and with the children, is everybody said yes to me. I got Ventura Police Department. I got OPD. I got a lot of people involved. And one of the things that I said is that with the movie that came out and with the situation of the pedophiles and the trauma, like you said, addiction, blah, blah, blah. I said, I think with my vision is to continue and bring the awareness on the streets, like soldiers. Bring it out, have discussions, have functions, and support our local law enforcement that do the job. Have you guys seen that movie?
I haven't brought myself to be able to watch it yet.
Are you talking about Sound of Freedom?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Yep. That powerful is powerful.
Well, yeah. You know what I took off on seeing that you did. So you did see it.
No, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I have not.
Right. I watched a movie, in this out of country, and there's a thing where he uses a little boy, and I know about nonprofits and their agendas and what they're doing. God bless them. And I saw where he came in and he just got done rescuing this boy. The boy's missing his sister, and he comes in to talk to his boss, And he looks at his boss and he's got this emotion in his eyes. And he says, I'm going after the girl. He says, no. And he says, unless I go after the girl, the pieces are broken inside me and I can't put them back together. And it hit me. We don't know their story, what they go through, these great people that go after them. Yeah. We don't know what the families go through out here in regards to getting a child back that's been sex trafficked or been violated, like you and I, Jason. We don't know we've never heard that story. What I do know is I did something in Palm Springs. So this leads to the nonprofit, the idea. And you'll know this being a survivor. I was out there with Randy Boyd. You've heard of him, Courageous Healers? Okay, I was with Randy, and I was out there in Palm Springs. I was out there with Patricia Kimball, and we were raising money to get backpacks and other stuff. But I was with Randy, and Patrice says, Randy says, "What did you pray for?" And Patrice says, "I prayed for one of these children to have a normal life." And I said, well, what is she talking about? She goes, well, these children that have been molested, sex trafficked, the chances of them having a normal life are not very good. So I was talking to Patrice, and her husband's one of those guys. I don't even know if that's her real name. And I said, Patrice, can you tell me a little bit about it? And she told me, and then I'm blessed that I have friends that are police officers today. And I asked her, and she told me the story about how they do the surveillance here in United States, California, Ventura, where you live, right here in our old backyard, and how when they come in, they want to get the group together, and then they're dressed like these guys, monsters, and they come in and they pull these children out. Children are screaming. They separate them. If they're not wearing clothes, they don't. They just give them something to cover with. They're wiped down for DNA. And I'm hearing the story. And then when I saw that part in the movie where Jim talked about that, I said, well, we need to bring that here, and we need to honor those men and women that do that job. We can have all the nonprofits, Children Night I'm connected to under their umbrella. She does a hell of a job on the streets with prostitution and runaways. But unless we support these men and women that go after these children, that's where I want to do with the nonprofit, is to be able to honor them and give back to them. Yeah. Because unless we do, we need more of them. And then in regards to yours and my story, Jason, I asked this officer I know, I asked Martin Perez, because he knows some people, so I can never do that job. And I said, Sergeant Perez, I said, they're sort of like molested too. And he said, yeah, in a way, Lang, a job like that I couldn't do. Sure. So that's what the nonprofit, the Nobody Knows But Me, is about, bringing awareness and trying to bring money and have these people talk on that kind of level. Right. That's my vision, sir.
Good. Yeah. Good. That's a great vision to have. Make sure you get a really good board of directors.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you get a board of directors that believes in your mission. Okay. That is key. Okay. That is critical. And I would keep it to maybe 5 to 7 people, no more than that. The minute you get it over that, now you've got all types of personalities coming together, and different views and all that nonsense. But if you start there and you've got that good board of directors behind you, man, you can take it as far as you want to take it.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I think one of the important pieces too is to hopefully help these young people with any tools to process it, so they don't end up being the story later of being an addict and on the street. Right. It's that thing that Flindt and I go, how can we get more, not only early awareness, but intervention with it, and tools to actually help people through these traumas, these processes. I think when you talk about you having another surgery, I see little Flindt, the little boy that's having to go through this, and it's like, again, mom and dad, right. And it's no different for these kids. And I didn't even know I was going to think about this for the rest of the day, but early this morning, I'm breezing through all the social media stuff, and there's a TikTok piece on a little boy that is
speaking in front of the judge. Okay. Who had,
Okay.
and he is the little boy is a 17-year-old little boy that is 6 inches shorter than he should be. He has a 4th grade education, and he is begging the judge to put his grandmother behind bars for life
Yeah, I
because
saw
of.
it.
Did you see that one?
Yes, yeah, yeah, I saw it. Yes, sir.
I mean, but and is that just such? I mean, it's so evil that I wanted to jump through the phone and just grab this lady by the throat and take her out myself.
She was 85 years old.
85 years old. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But here was also the thought. Not only is this little boy starting with such a, I mean, he's got so far to go in this. I just pray that there's a family out there that can take this young man in. But one of my main concerns is this is the perfect scenario for a kid winding up on drugs on the street, being taken advantage of, and maybe dying before he's 20 years old.
Absolutely. But you know what else I learned, and I don't know if you agree with me, is absolutely, I'm glad. That's wow. That's a God shot. You saw that? I saw it last night, and I remember she was 85.
Yeah.
I was in a relationship that ended up getting me in trouble. Carol, Catherine was part of, kept saying for me to get away from it, and what happened is I was being manipulated. I had a little girl in my life that I loved dearly, and a child, and I loved her, and we ended up breaking up, but it was a manipulation. So I ended up in my office. And it was a few years back, and I ended up grabbing, there was some fentanyl. I ended up actually getting some fentanyl in the office, and I wanted to die. But at that time, I was advocating for the people that were dying in Project Room Key from addiction. There was a big story out here, and I was on that story. I was uncovering some stuff, working with some different people to uncover the deaths, and it was the Vagabond and Oxnard. And Catherine helped me with it. She put out some stuff, and people were overdosing, and I ended up writing that article, Vagrancy versus Homelessness. I had talked about it in California Insider. So I'm in the office, but I got this responsibility, and I don't want to go out half-ass backwards. So the fentanyl, it's there, but I can't do that, and there ain't no gun, and I probably couldn't do it. So I just got to deal with this pain. So I call Randy, and you might relate to this, and I'll go back to that about you were saying before 20. So I called Randy Boyd up, and I said, Randy, I lost Bonnie, man. I'm in pain. And I was crying. He goes, where are you, Lang? Don't worry about where I'm at. Where are you at, Lang? Are you at the office? Don't worry about it. Randy, I can't do this no more. Listen to me, Lang. Lang, listen to me. I want to pray with you. No, Randy, I don't know. I'm just in so much effing pain. And I said, Randy, I got to ask you something. Yeah. See what they did to us. And the question I asked Randy, I said, when Patricia said that prayer about these children having a normal life, was she talking about me, Randy? Yes, Lang. You were in that prayer. And then he said, that's where now this is where the work's got to be done to have anything normal in your life. You know Randy's story, right, Jason?
Yeah.
The wounded child inside,
Yeah.
Randy was also, he was hurt, and he was mentoring me. But it was a different situation, but it proved it because I didn't get out of it in time, things happen. So I knew then about the brokenness that you were talking about, that child at 17. I was him. I don't know what happened to you, and I'm sorry. But unless we do the work, and it's a lot of work on a daily basis, and it's a mental thing. I mean, it's like, I gotta fucking do this. The chances of us getting to the other side are nil and none. What those fucking monsters did to us, I wrote about it. They go on with their lives. Kevin Scott Hamilton, owns Iconic Event Studios. He's worth all this money and got the mansions and everything. And I wrote about that, and Catherine actually helped me write that article, The Truth Nobody Knows. And it was the keys to recovery, they have their lives and they take no accountability. I'm in a lawsuit right now. Deny, and it causes more pain. You know what I mean? This guy's denying what he did, but not just to me, but to so many. Yeah, recovery and recovery. It's a hell of a ride. It's a hell of a job. It's for me. It's a full-time job, sir.
But remember something. This evil person, he can have all the mansions, all the cars, all the money, and he's not going to be able to take that to hell with him when he gets there.
Yeah, absolutely not. It was funny that because the title talked about pain. Wow. I was also called for a show one time with Randy. I had Randy. I said, "Hey, I got these people. They're calling me." I said, "They want to do the in-house studio. Blah blah blah." Was another one. And Randy said, "You're not ready yet." And I said, "Well, you know what, Randy, you're going to go with me." He goes, "I'm out here." He was a naive in Empire, and he said, "Lang," he goes, "Let me ask you something, because you're honest, and that's part of your journey. And if somebody reads about it, they know where you're at. So right now, where are you at?" And this is in the beginning, not the other. In the beginning, I'm not there no more. So he said, "What happens if you get up there and I'm not there?" And they say, "Lang, how do you feel about your perpetrator?" I want to hear an honest answer. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, when things were going down back in the day, we tried to commit suicide, and I go with this hitting him. I said, he might end up in the bathroom, put the gun to his mouth. And I said, I want to be there and wear goggles. And I said, when he blows his head off, I go, I just want to be there. So you're going to answer the journalist or the commentator that way?" Yeah. And I go, then I want to hit 100 mil. I want to hit 1 million views. And I said, we can get a Tylenol commercial that'll bump it up. And if you're suffering no head at all, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. And Randy said, "What's the phone number, Lang?" So Randy called them and said, he ain't going. So where I'm at today, and so I want people, your listeners, to hear this. I'm at forgiveness. Do I wish something would happen? Yeah. Do I want him to blow his head off? No. Because other people are involved, and I'm a man that's trying to walk the walk of God. It's a process. So it's a part where Randy talks about the healing part, about the forgiveness. So I'm forgiving, but I'm not quite there yet. And people that listen to me, I want them to know that.
Understandable.
Right. If he was to get clipped by a car and put in a wheelchair for a little while, I'm cool. But I'm being honest.
Sure.
I'm being honest.
That's all understandable. That's
Yeah.
all. Those are all feelings that are normal. I mean, come on. I mean, it is. I mean, look, we reach a certain point, and that's what recovery is about. It is about forgiveness. It is about letting go. It is. But let me tell you something. God gave us brains for a reason. Okay. Yeah. And all this, and the forgiving part, yes. Okay. But the forgetting part, the reason why we don't forget is so we don't let it happen to us again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's literally the purpose of memory.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
And for me, the forgiveness part was for me. Fuck them. It's not for anyone else. That's for me. Because I'm not going to have any more sleepless nights about it. And I'm not going to self-medicate over it anymore. I didn't do it for them or for him. I did it for me.
Yeah.
That's what, I didn't want to have that life anymore. And, I wanted it to be a tool. I mean, my kids are, teenagers. My gosh, my son's about to be 15. And they know, because I wanted them armed. That's why, here's my story. Here's my knowledge. If you see or experience something very similar, you get out of that situation, you call fire, whatever it is, It was allowed me to arm others with tools.
Right.
So the forgiveness piece, that's for me. I say it's up to God after that.
God sorted out the mess.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is.
I'm fortunate enough that if I'm able to talk in front of somebody, men, I'll sit there because, especially dealing in the homeless community with people in different type of programs and stuff like that. And I try to let them know that Uncle Juan was a piece of shit. And if you sat on Uncle Juan's lap more than one time and you feel the guilt, or he promised you something, and you're not able to come out and say, hey, this happened to me, your recovery is going to be nil and none. And if you showed up here today to listen to my story, then I have just a slight inclination that it might have happened to you. So the analogy I use is that If you were home and Uncle Juan was on the lap and he kept touching you funny and he did something to you, but he did it to you more than once, you're probably dealing with guilt because you should have said something the first time, and that's not true. Why? Because you were a child. There was fear you're being groomed. So you sat on Uncle Juan's lap many, many times. So because you did then, you feel the guilt and the shame, and you say to yourself, I play a part. But the fact is Uncle Juan was a monster.
Right.
You play no part.
Right.
So if you want to talk to me about the 12 steps of alcohol, I'm pretty controversial with that one. I believe in the program. I believe in the promises. I believe in the steps and how I utilize them. But in regard to the part of talking about what a part I play, and if somebody tells you that you play any part, I go, you know what, tell that person to go F himself because you play no part. Right. And it was a reason, you know what? So if you sat on Juan's lap and he was making you promise or making you threat, or you thought Uncle Juan was a great guy, and why did Uncle Juan do this? Uncle Juan was an effing monster. And you know what? You need to come out and say, this is what happened to me. Guess what? You let it go and you give it to him, let him know he had no weapon right. He had no right to do what he did.
I agree.
He had no right. You play no part, man.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You were a child. Understand, you were a child, and no adult individual has a right to do that, to groom you, to even put some stuff to manipulate, to get in your head. They have no right to live in your head rent free. Right. And the only way to get that effort, to get that situation, is by you have to say it. And, you know, this happened to me and Uncle Juan did this. And you know what? F Uncle Juan. I'm not going to let him live in my head rent free. And this is what I need to do. And I need help, man. It's okay.
Mr. Andersen.
Well, Lang, you're a good man. You know what? You're a good man with a great heart. And I have nothing but the ultimate respect for you, what you've been through, what you've accomplished, what you've come through. I give no higher praise to a man that has accomplished what you've accomplished. I mean that sincerely with all of my heart, my friend.
Can I tell a story that when I do get a chance to speak, there's a story I'd like to tell to end this, if it's okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Unless you surrender to God, nothing's possible. And I tell this story about God's love and your love for loving me, because I'm broken. And I admit that. There's this couple, and it's back in the early 1800s, late 1800s. And they're sharecroppers, and they got this little boy, and they have a little girl. Little boy's about 5, little girl's about 7. And this one year they make some extra money, you know, a sharecropper. So they go into town, and you had to go in the post office and you look through the catalog, you know, what are you going to get? You know, what would you like to buy, honey? So the lady opens up this catalog. It was probably JCPenney's or Sears. And she opens it up and she sees this thing that's a mirror, but a looking glass. It's a mirror. It's a long mirror. You know, they didn't have mirrors back then. You know, you look at a reflection, you know, your hair, you didn't really see the smudges that turn on your face. But it was this mirror that they could take to their home. So they'd go into town and they get their food, their feed and stuff like that. And they'd go to the post office. Did it come in? Did it come in? It has come in. Finally, it comes in. They get off the wagon, they get their stuff, it comes in. It's wrapped in, you know, like the brown paper with the twine. And let's wait till we get home. So they get home and she rips off the paper. She looks in the mirror. She admires herself. She's this beautiful woman. The man looks at himself, and he's a strong, you know, guy. He's got this overall on. He's got some dirt on his face. The little girl looks in the mirror, and she's, you know, a little cutie and, you know, 7, whatever. And she's doing this. She got dirt on her face. And then I look in the mirror, or the boy looks in the mirror, and he starts crying. Well, the little boy was deformed. He was deformed at birth. And he starts crying. And he says, Mommy and Daddy, you see the way you look and you still love me. And they put their arms around him. And they said, because I'm your mom and your dad. We're broken people, but God loves us. And we look in the mirror being broken and all the ugliness and the deformities that's been thrown at us or we brought upon ourselves. But God loves us no matter how we look.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what it is. Jason?
Thank you, Lang.
Thank you, buddy.
It was my honor. Thank you.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, please call Parents and Addicts in Need at 559-579-1551 or check us out online at painnonprofit.org. Follow us on social media at Pain Nonprofit. Please subscribe to the podcast and share with others wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. To donate, please click the link in the description and help us save more lives gripped by addiction.